Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one, we are taking a look at Howard the Duck, some day one decks, and whether or not this card is worth your 6,000 tokens. So Howard the Duck, he is a 1-cost 2 power with the text ongoing. Tap this to see the top card of your deck. Now, with the release of his good friend Iron Lad the other week, there are some people who are pretty excited for this card. However, I think it is a pretty tall ask, 6,000 tokens to purchase this one. I think this is going to be a card a lot of people wait for rotation. I think the same might be true of Iron Lad, but I think he will get more fanfare than Howard will, just because he's a more useful card on his own, while Howard kind of needs some synergy to be really good. He can give you information on his own, which can be valuable in its own right, but I don't think it's going to be enough to justify him in very many decks on his own. But he obviously has synergy with both the recently released Iron Lad and Jubilee, with the Jubilee change. So now she flips the top card. You can see the top card with Howard, pretty neat. But we're going to look at some decks for this. Overall, I don't think Howard is going to be a worthy day one purchase for many players. I think this is a card that you're probably better to wait on. However, I do think it's important to mention that the thing with Marvel Snap is you want to do what is the most fun for you. Now, for a lot of players, fun equals winning, so they want to be very careful with where they spend their tokens, as if they spend it on a bad card and aren't winning with the bad card, then it kind of feels bad and like a waste, and they could have got it when it rotated down. That's pretty understandable. But if you're just a big fan of the character or the effect and you think it's going to be fun for you, I do think, there's value in that. You should make the decisions that are going to be resulting in you having the most fun you can with the game. So it's obviously going to depend person to person whether you see value in this card or not. I think a lot of players like myself are going to be taking a pass on this one because 6,000 is just a bit too steep, but I do think he will be fun to mess around with when he rotates down into Pool 4 or Pool 3, but especially with High Evolutionary coming up next week, I think you definitely want to have some tokens in the bank because that card looks like it can create a whole new kind of deck archetype around it, and those are always cards you want to be investing in if you want more options in your gameplay in Snap. So what are the decks that Howard the Duck is going to make a difference in? The first one here is actually the one I think Howard has the biggest chance of doing something impactful, and that is Lad Galactus. So the whole idea with this deck is we're going to have Iron Lad as a backup source of getting Galactus, or maybe another key piece that we need to help close out the game. And Howard can not only help us do that more reliably, but he allows us to kind of strategically play around what we're going to be drawing, and he can be useful even without the Lad, as knowing, hey, I'm going to get my Electro next turn, or I'm going to get my Galactus on time on turn 5 when I need it. That can be helpful in terms of letting you snap earlier, so you get more cubes with your deck. Definitely seems like a card that is going to help you mitigate your snaps and retreats. Reminds me of Kang a lot in this way. However, he's actually putting at least a little bit of power on board as a bonus, and you obviously don't have to wait until late in the game to play him. So this is probably the shell I think he's going to do the most work in, being able to reliably see what your Lad is going to be pulling, as well as what card you will be drawing next, seems to be very beneficial in a deck like Galactus. Another deck that Howard has a lot of potential in is the Sandman Ramp deck. This is one where we get the benefits of both Jubilee and Iron Lad, so double the duck value, and also just helps us plan out our turns, like Galactus. Being able to know if we're getting our ramp on time is usually pretty important in terms of knowing if you want to be staying in the game or not with this style of deck, as sometimes you're going to draw most of your high cost stuff and then it's not going to feel quite as good. So being able to know that ahead of time and get out of those games for lesser losses definitely seems like value. I'm sure there are a few different ways to build this one, but we ended up just going with a bunch of good targets for the Lad, as well as some premium kind of shutdown strategies with Sandman and Leech. These really hurt a lot of the popular decks right now, so it seems like kind of an underrated archetype even after Sandman was knocked down a peg in terms of power. But I think this is another one where Howard will actually be pretty impactful in terms of maximizing your cubes in a given game with this style of deck. Then we have what is one of my personal favorite kind of off-meta archetypes, and that is the Zabu Zoo deck, using the recently buffed Shana, as well as Khazar and Zabu. Getting your 4-drops out for cheap is really nice, and Lad is kind of a perfect addition to this style of deck, as we really are fishing for some pretty specific effects, namely Khazar and Blue Marvel to buff our go-wide board. Even sometimes having a Hail Mary at a Shana for the end of the game can be valuable as well. And then Shang-Chi. The Shang-Chi Ghost combo has been really, really good for this deck. And the main reason is a lot of times you can't help but being ahead with these Zoo decks. It just kind of happens even when you don't want it to. You will oftentimes take priority. So making sure that you are able to efficiently throw priority with Ghost so we can get that second reveal Shang on the final turn is really, really key, and helps with this deck's kind of biggest problem, aside from Killmonger, which is sometimes they just go way too tall for us, and being able to equalize that definitely gives this deck a bit more game and is a bit of a surprise. A lot of people are not expecting Shang-Chi to come popping out of a Zoo deck. So this is definitely a archetype I think Howard might have some potential in. If nothing else, you're making your Lad a bit better, and you can plan your turns a little bit more in advance, which is very convenient. And then the last deck we have here for Howard is going to be an ongoing Thanos Zoo. So this one much more focused on ongoing abilities, and we have Spectrum to buff up all our ongoing stuff. Have a little bit going here in terms of lane lock stuff, where we're closing people out with Goose a bit, which can be pretty convenient. You could lean more into that archetype if you want, with additions like Professor X and Daredevil, but this is the way I opted to go. There's a lot of good ongoing cards, Cosmo and Armor acting as some protection. I think Cosmo's really, really underplayed right now. A lot of powerful on reveals going around, and nobody's really using Cosmo to stop him. So definitely kind of underrated compared to where it was a month ago in the Shuri meta. But I do think this is a pretty solid version of Zoo. We don't have to have as many 1-drops because we get so many 1-drops from Thanos. Our hand stays big, so Dino gets some value. And we're not always going the Spectrum route. Sometimes we'll play Thanos. Sometimes we'll play a Blue Marvel and a 1-drop. There are a lot of variety options you can go with this deck, and definitely keeps it flexible, which is what I enjoy about it. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think about Howard the Duck in the comments below. Are you going to be picking him up? Are you going to be waiting for him to drop? Is there stuff you're excited to try? Let me know in the comments. That's going to wrap it up for this one. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.